Everyone, welcome to your first session at conference. I'm guessing it's your first session for many of you. What a great start after 14 years, first Labour government. It will be a very different dynamic in this year's conference, we hope. And what a great start and kickoff to discuss the Labour Friends of Turkey. So my name is Hatice Beton. I'm the CEO of Sovereign Strategy. And I'm pleased to introduce my distinguished panelists who will float in, I was told, as we go. But first of all, let me introduce Peray Ahmet, who's the Haringey council leader, and also Unmesh Desai, member of the London Assembly. Welcome to today's morning session. Please see this as a bit of an informal session to discuss with you as well what we're hoping to basically bring about on the Labour Friends of Turkey, what we are trying to engage, how we try to engage with community. Sorry, my coffee hasn't kicked in yet. So let me kickstart. The Labour Friends of Turkey has been launched on the 2nd of September, formally in London by Nesil Çalışkan, who's a newly elected MP of Barking. She's the first Turkish Cypriot woman elected into the British Parliament, and it's obviously a great moment for the Turkish heritage diaspora. She unfortunately cannot join us today. She sends her apologies. She will arrive later, but we have obviously great council leaders and assembly members who can tell us a bit about what they expect from a Labour Friends of Turkey group and how there can be a realignment, reapproachment of Labour, UK and Turkey ties. So first of all, let me kickstart by asking you, Peray, if I may, how do you think can Labour strengthen its ties with Turkey going forward, especially when you look at the geopolitical regional crisis we're going through? Both UK and Turkey play a fundamental role as allies in, bringing about peace. But what, in general terms, let me start by saying this: what role do you envision Labour Friends of Turkey to take in the next few years ahead of us?
Yeah, thank you, Hatice. And as you said, I'm the leader of Haringey Council, and for those of you who know, or for those of you who don't know, Haringey is a North London borough and has always been known to have a very large Turkish-speaking Turkish and Kurdish community. My family were there in the 1950s and the 1960s, and that migration and immigration to that area has continued for many, many years. So this forum will play a really vital role, because actually there's not been anything for many years, and one of our ex-councillors, or former councillors, who I was just speaking to Unmesh about, Nilgün Canver, which some of you may know of, she'd set up Labour Friends of Turkey some years back. She'd come to the UK from Turkey and been a councillor in Haringey for many, many years. And since Nilgün died a few years back, sadly, and we've not really had anything there. But it's really important because we have such a huge diaspora here. Obviously, Turkey plays a huge and vital role within that region, as we see. But for the diasporas in this country, which there's a variation. We have a huge Turkish Cypriot community in the UK. We have a huge Kurdish community from Turkey as well. So I think it's really important that those links are there, and as Turkey plays that vital role in that area of the world, that we have those links with the Labour Party and with those of us who belong to the diaspora here in the UK.
Thank you so much, Peray. And over to you, Unmesh. What is your hope of Labour Friends of Turkey 2.0, as we heard?
Thank you. Good morning. Well, firstly, thank you for asking me to say a few words. I'm a last-minute substitute, and I hope an adequate one for Nesil, who's not going to be with us until later on today. And also can acknowledge and thank Assembly for Labour for facilitating this meeting, and all the people who worked to build for this meeting. The very first meeting, Fringe meeting, along with some others, taking place at the same time on the first day of conference of a Labour government. Can I just echo what Peray said about our late friend Nilgün? So this actually is something of a relaunch of Labour Friends of Turkey, which was set up some years ago. And I think it's fitting to acknowledge her, remember her. And when Nilkun was around in those years, talking about solidarity, about the friends group and all that, we were talking about different political climate. So I think in terms of answering your question, Chair, and by the way, so I'm the London Assembly member for City and East London, which covers City of London, Tower Hamlets, Newham, Barking and Dagenham. Some 1.1 million residents, the biggest GLA constituency, 3 councils in the corporation, and I've been there for, this is my 9th year. I was a Newham councillor for 20 years before that. I think Labour Friends of Türkiye is what we make of it. So I don't expect anything. It's how we contribute to it at different levels, whether as a council leader or as councillors or as activists or as MPs or from the assembly. And if I can draw parallels with other sort of Labour Friends groups, Labour Friends of Bangladesh, for instance. So the British Bangladeshi community in my constituency is a very important part of the area, a very important component. The biggest Bangladeshi diaspora community outside Bangladesh. I'm a British Indian, but obviously representing the many diverse groups in East London is a very important part of my work. And I see Labour Friends of Turkey growing along the same lines, shaped by its members, of course, and that is what they see of it. There's doing 2 things. Firstly, bringing issues concerning the British Turkish community into the Labour Party in a structured manner, organised manner, through our various representatives, with the parliamentarians like Nesil, council leaders like Peray, councillors or myself at the Assembly, how we can actually make the powers that be, the various stakeholders inside the Labour Party sort of respond positively in terms of formulation of policy, development of policy, meeting the needs of the community, informing them from the grassroots. I always believe in politics from bottom up, not a top down. And of course, representation is important, but representation in terms of bringing the issues of the community to the forefront, and the continuing sort of struggle to build a cohesive, integrated community, which takes even more importance now after the riots that we saw a few weeks ago. And the second part is the other way around. So it's not just bringing the concerns of the British Turkish community into the Labour Party, but I think equally important, if not more, is taking the Labour Party into the community. I joined the Labour Party, I think, in the mid-80s, became a councillor, started playing an active role in the mid-90s, and there was a detachment. I worked for Ethnic Council for the Police Committee, so, institutions like the Haringey, and many other issues. There's issues of refugees arriving from Turkey and so on, and many parts of the Labour Party, Labour movement, simply were not aware of the changing dynamics of our community. It was self-organization of groups like Haringey that actually started forcing the agenda into mainstream politics. We cannot remain as fringe players on the side. We've got to be at the heart of where things happen. And so it's taking the Labour Party through the CLPs into where community events are, where people organize in a variety of ways. Labour Friends of Bangladesh, for instance, organize events every year at conference, but they're also during election times, taking candidates around, being involved in many community, from Eid parties to other community events in City and East London, and that way the Labour Party still be part of the fabric of the community, and that way against credibility. I think we've come a long way. Progress has been made, but there's still, still a long way to go. So it's a two-way relationship. Yeah. And I think from City Hall, what I can do in my third term, I'll play my role.
Thank you. It's so important that you're mentioning the dual integration, because we can't expect always one party coming to the other. So I think that's definitely one thing that Nesil has to take on board as a leader of this group. But can I ask you, we talked about the issues of the community, both of you referred to this. If you were to prioritize, let's say this group is set up, we do a first launch with communities, what are the policy priority themes you think the Labour Party should take more on board, thinking of the Turkish diaspora or Turkish-speaking diaspora, like you in the council, are dealing with many of these issues. What are these hot topics?
Yeah. Oh God. Where do I start? So, I mean, first of all, I think it's worth noting that, like every community, the Turkish-speaking community is hugely diverse. So some have money, some don't have money. So I think you just have to sort of bear that in mind. It's not a homogenous group. However, there's probably one thing that really kind of does hold the community together, and that's the sort of business element. So in terms of small business, that's always a huge topic. So I am the leader in Haringey. You'll all know Green Lanes. So, you know, there's a whole thriving business community. So I think those conversations about small business, I think, is really at the heart of that. And then issues that are impacting on everyone really in our city, but around cost of living, around housing, you know, that's an absolutely massive issue. So we have a number of housing estates. You know, we have a huge Turkish-speaking population there, as well as some of the more sort of, you know, international relations and collaboration. So for me, as council leader, you know, I have a hugely diverse community locally, but the issues, you know, as I said, the small business element, I think, is massive. And I'm not just saying that because, you know, Ibrahim's got the leaflet there, but it really is, because I think that's one thing that these communities, and, you know, Greek Cypriot, all of it, there is a huge kind of focus on that aspect. So I think making sure that dialogue as local authorities, but as a Labour government, has to be aware of as well.
Unmesh?
Yeah, I was just thinking when I was talking about the parallels with the British Bangladeshi community, and I think there were some stereotypes, and still are to some extent, about the British Bangladeshi community, and I see parallels in the British Turkish community, that it's just people who own sort of restaurants, not even Bangladeshi restaurants or British Bangladeshi owned restaurants, British, you know, they also know the generic title of their Indian restaurant. But the British Bangladeshi community, over the last decade in particular, has been growing in importance in East London and elsewhere, culturally, socially, politically, economically, and you see that all over the place, representation in Parliament and others. And I think those stereotypes still exist to some extent from where I am, about the British Turkish community. And, you know, apart from destroying the stereotypes, but again, in many parts of London, but in other parts of the country, the diaspora, you know, world, the community is growing all the time, politically, economically, culturally, socially, and it's how we as representatives at different levels actually then use the various platforms we have to push the issues. So just speaking from the perspective of the Greater London Authority, which, if I could just explain a little bit, the mayor is the person who's got executive powers. He, and so far it's always been he, holds all the powers. Our job is to scrutinize the mayor and hold him to account. Although I see my role also as a campaigning assembly member, promoting East London, both abroad. So I've been to Bangladesh a couple of times because of the recent sort of unrest there. I was planning to go in November, I still may go, and I try to build links with all my diaspora communities. They are all of equal importance to me. Sort of, you know, getting the diaspora community, the diaspora world into East London, promoting East London in the diaspora, in many ways. So I think the mayor, through his deputy mayors, people like Howard Dobbs, the deputy mayor for business, you know, how we can use the institutions of City Hall. Yeah. The London Assembly has got a limited role. All the platform is what you make of it, so that's not an excuse. But my liaison with the deputy mayors, who then liaise with Sadiq, we can use, there are about 12 deputy mayors, I think, from business, policing, and of course the issues that affect all our communities, knife crime and so on, affect the British Turkish community. So it's about how we keep the, you know, all sections of the community in our mind. So from where I am, I'm the Labour leader on crime and policing, domestic violence. You know, some shocking statistics came out earlier this week about sexual assaults on women, hate crime, which affects us all. Knife crime, hate crime, domestic violence, modern slavery, tackling some of the gangs. So I'm trying to work now, the guy who's been appointed to head the Border Command Unit, Martin Hewitt actually worked with him. So there are many ways I think that we can actually, you know, raise issues pertinent to our community.
Yeah. Yeah, you raised a lot of points here. I think, Peral, you wanted to jump in here.
Yeah, no, it was just on the point about, I guess, stereotyping. I mean, I think actually what we're trying to do is certainly in Haringey is the opposite. And, you know, we all know Ibrahim's sort of wonderful kebab awards. It's kind of owning that reputation. So I think it's, you know, actually if I look at Haringey, Green Lanes is a kind of destination point. And it's not about looking at it negatively. Of course, there's people within the communities that are, you know, have different education, lawyers, doctors, etc. But I think we have to own the fact that, you know, that industry is bringing a lot of money to the UK. And also this is what, you know, my dad had a cafe, my dad had a kebab shop, you know, in East London, actually.
Yeah, I know.
Plasto. You know, so I think it's about how you own that. And certainly in Haringey, what we're looking to do, we're actually trying to emulate Brick Lane. And sort of look at sort of Green Lanes in that round, but just the bit around crime, I think there is I don't think we've got the scope to get into that here and now, but there is a huge issue with organised crime within parts of London and these communities, and that they are international
exactly
gangs. Yeah,
retail crime, organised crime. I think that's what the Labour government has to focus on in the coming months. But can I ask you, so when we have a lot of young, I think, a young audience here sitting here, and if I think of Labour Friends of Turkey, as you said, there are these classic topics we have to tackle, bringing the community generally to the party, tackling organised crime issues, violence against women, or housing issues. These are all classic topics we are tackling and have to tackle. But if you're thinking of a Labour Friends of Turkey 2.0 and you think of the young generation, the rising middle class of Turkish-speaking communities within the UK, what other topic areas do you think can the Turkish young community feed into the Labour Party? Like, I'm thinking here of, you know, the whole movement on climate change, the technological disruptions on AI. You have so many. Oh, okay, you're already busy. You have so many basically SMEs, like Turkey.
Yeah, sure.
If you think of Turkey, it's over 97% of businesses are SMEs, similar to the UK. So how can we tackle these new topics in order to create more party political identification and the turnout of young voters amongst Turks?
Yeah.
So back to the basics, what do you think can you do to engage the youth more into the Labour Party, or how can the Labour Friends of Turkey help with that?
So Unmesh has kind of touched on this a bit, but it's also about representation, isn't it? So I think the more representation, so it's not, that's not a question for me, is it? That's a question for everybody, because I run a council, you know, that's got its limits, it's got, you know, and actually, as we've referenced, the Deputy Mayor for Environment for London is a person of Turkish background. So I think there's an opportunity there. You spoke about environment, get Mete involved. I think he's probably at another meeting now. Get him involved, look at how we can make those links, as you said, with the sort of emerging sort of class of young people. I will say, however, that politically, there is that thing about representation. So you've referenced Ness. Ness is an MP. I'm a council leader. We have a number of councillors. But I think there is that thing about how we talk about representation and political representation as well. It can't be left to 3-4 people, you know. So I think it's important. And I think the example of the Bangladeshi, the Indian, the Pakistani, you know, it's always interesting. But I think there is something about ensuring that political representation as well, and making sure that we are getting younger people coming through. When I grew up, it was, you know, mainly it was people like Nilgun and others, but I think it's really important that the political representation element is there, and relevant kind of policy makers and decision makers are here, you know, and talking to us, and talking to, you know, looking for collaborations with Turkey as well.
Thank you.
I think also the issue of being role models. I mean, to have someone like Peray, and I'm not saying this criticism here, but I've known Peray for quite some time, you know, as a British Turkish and as a woman leader, as a role model, that things can be done, barriers can be broken. There's still many barriers to be broken. There's still mountains to climb. We only just started our journey, and you know, the next 4 years with the Labour government, with you know, change is happening, the change agenda, let's play our role. And I think the sort of issues you mentioned, young people, AI and so on, that what is politics? Politics is about party politics. Everything is political with a small p. And I started my political journey through the anti-racist movement in Brick Lane in the late 70s. But then I came to a conclusion some years later when the local council, a Labour council, was closing the funding of immigration centre in Neom. And I said, hold on, this is the number one issue. The centre was doing good work. There were lots of reasons, some political agendas. And that's what got more stuck into the party. I stood for the council, and here I am. So it's about mainstreaming things, getting stuck in. And this is where I think people like our late dear friend Nilgün, but what Peray is doing, Nesil, other people, and that is why sort of Labour Friends of Turkey, along with other community organisations, are so important. Of giving platforms, inspiring people, and always looking to the future.
No, that's a good point. I think the new responsibility would be how do we give the diverse communities and the demographics a new voice and make sure Turkish people or people coming from Turkey are integrated into the new topics that are important for our globalized world, but also within the hotspot of London. If I, looking at the time as well, but if I look into the economic relationship, of course, after Brexit, the first trade deal was done between Turkey and the United Kingdom. The trade value is around 26 billion. So there is a massive trade value between those two countries. Looking at, of course, green lanes, you spoke about the major economic boost coming from the Turkish community, but where do you see the economic relationships between the UK and Turkey in the next few years? Especially, we have seen Keir Starmer has met President Erdogan. What would you hope in terms of economic ties between the two countries and governments in the next few years? And how can that benefit the communities?
So, I mean, my focus is always local. I mean, I guess if we wanted it, we could have asked David Lammy here, who's also our local MP as well. But we'll leave it to him. But I think it's really important. And again, if we bring it back to local and how that then relates to the global and the regional. So back in the 60s and 70s, there was a huge textile industry in North London and East London. And, there was South Asian, but also Turkish communities. I know that there's been a lot of trade. Turkey provides a lot, in terms of the textile industry and continues to do so for some of the big companies. So I think it's just sort of recognising that contribution. But as I said, my perspective always comes from how that benefits, the community I'm responsible for in London and making sure that they get to play a role. Because I think what happened in the 80s and 90s when that industry shifted to places like Turkey, a lot of people lost their jobs. So I think that all those things are in the forefront of my mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Peray said, and obviously my role at City Hall is a different sort of role. But it goes without saying, Turkey is a very important player in world politics, simply because of where it is geographically. And Labour Friends of Turkey, as it evolves, as the way its members wish. So you talk about economic policy, of course, trade and so on, but also foreign policy. Again, if I can draw parallels with what the work that Labour Friends of Bangladesh is doing, they're going through some very turbulent times in Bangladesh politics. In fact, the whole world, we are living in turbulent times. In Ukraine, the conflicts in the Middle East, what's going on happening over the last few days. It's about, whilst maintaining, and this goes for all countries, including India, Bangladesh, the issues of trade, of economic policy, but also of human rights. How do you reconcile these different sort of trends? I remember the late Robin Cook at conference I was there, my first conference in 1997, and this is my 27th conference consecutively, but talking about ethical foreign policy. Well, what does an ethical foreign policy mean in the context of trade? There are some difficult decisions. I mean, Keir Starmer has been criticized by some in our own party for speaking to the Italian Prime Minister. And I was asked this question. I've done an article left forward about some of these issues. Where do we go post riots? Well, she is the democratically elected Prime Minister of Italy. The issues about Modi in India. But India is a big trading partner, very big trading partner. Post Brexit, Britain needs India, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, there are some serious issues. I've been to Turkey, on a cross-party delegation. We went to observe some we were in Ankara. This was about 3-4 years ago. So I'm familiar with some aspect of Turkish policy. I don't claim to be an expert, but obviously London is an international city. I represent so many communities in East London. So I think as Labour Friends of Turkey evolves, some of these important and maybe sometimes difficult and uncomfortable issues, it's about talking about it, influencing our ministers, showing them different perspectives so the right policies can be formulated as much as possible. It's a difficult journey. Let's make no mistakes about it. And what's happened in Turkey will be decided by the people of Turkey. But obviously with such large diaspora communities here, we can't just say for that. We've got to play our role in different ways.
I think you touched on many good points here. So the one key thing is after 1997 being again in government, what is the new identity and responsibility of the Labour government? The Labour government has to realize, I think, be it for Turkey or any other countries, how do they reinvent their relationships, because they're now representing a government and they're not just an opposition. So that will determine a lot of the diplomatic ties. But coming to the point of what the Labour Friends of Turkey should and should not do, before we open up to the floor, what would you say, Peray, the Labour Friends of Turkey now in its new invention should definitely avoid doing and should do? Like, what are the two things you would recommend?
So I would say that Labour Friends of Turkey, in my view, it shouldn't be a think tank, and it's also, and I think both me and Unmesh, we come from, I think, the same place in terms of we're about kind of community activism. So I think we can set up a forum, but the party is always going to be aware of its communities and who their voters are and who their members are. So actually, what they're discussing with, Turkey should also be something that their communities here in London and elsewhere are on board with. So I think there's always that balance. It can't just be a conversation with, Turkish policymakers or Turkish ministers, because there is the element of what the diaspora. So I think tapping into that diaspora and not ignoring that and the diverse needs of the diaspora in this country, I think is quite key. Else it's a conversation here and not without any relevance to anyone else.
So people-centric and not making it about state relations.
Not just, I mean, there's a role for that in government,
exactly.
but I think it's this group should be aware of the huge diaspora and the diverse needs of that diaspora and trying to bring that together to be a voice, really.
Thank you. Thank you. Unmesh?
Couldn't agree more. I think if we just stick to some basic objectives, taking the Labour Party into the community, taking issues of communities as issues around us, the local issues, whether it's Haringey or Newham, national issues and international issues. But if we can, create the two-way sort of process and then see where we are next year. I mean, this is going to evolve. You can't just have a script that this is what Labour Friends of Turkey should be doing. It's got to be through people's lived experiences, whether they're elected reps, activists, whatever, and taking it stage by stage. But the basic objectives, I think, it's just obviously it's going to be more than a talking shop. I've seen other friends groups come and go over the years. Labour Friends of India seems to have disappeared now. But there are 3 or 4 other British Indian organisations within the Labour Party. But that's a debate for another time and another forum. But I think those two sort of concepts, taking the party into the community to the party, on issues that we can influence here. I mean, we have the council, international issues from all over the world.
Exactly.
That's right.
And it's about keeping communities united. I think that's our basic task here.
I couldn't agree more with you both, because we need to recognize, first of all, what is the identity of a Labour Friends of Turkey. And also, as you said, Peray, very in the beginning of the conversation, the Turkish-speaking community is so diverse, so many ethnic, religious diversities within the community, but also British Turks are different than those coming from Turkey. So how do we address their needs and their issues and make sure we create an identity and we integrate them within this party or in the Labour Friends of Turkey group? That will be, I think, the challenge, but also the opportunity for this new grouping. So let me open up in the last 5 minutes to the floor. What are you hoping from the Labour Friends of Turkey, or what are your reflections from what you have heard so far? Okay, no one has woken up yet. When I look at the lovely ladies in the back, you're all representing the... Okay, just...
It gets to
yeah.
I am the president of UCL Students Union, and we represent over 50,000 students. I'm Turkish, even though I don't look Turkish. So my question would be around, those students coming from Turkey to the UK, because I only came to this country alone when I was 17. I was sent to a school, and then I made my way through, basically. But if I had gotten much more support, I guess, I'm in an okay position, but I guess things could have been different. So how would you support students coming from, like, the mainland? Would be my question.
Over to you.
I guess it's, when you say support, I guess it's, what does that support look like? Yeah, local authority leader, someone says support, I'm going fine, no, but I think it's forums, isn't it? So I think it's that opportunity, setting up groups and forums and a way, because I see it with various other countries when the students come over, there's places like the embassy will put on events, do they do that here? So, things like that, so somewhere where it's a little anchor for you, so you're making your way through London, obviously experiencing all these different things, and then there's an anchor, the embassy and the group can act as a bit of an anchor for you to kind of have that little bit of your culture there whilst you're in a, strange city. So.
I guess it's more the cultural aspects of it as well, because the British Turks living in the UK, I guess the integration between the two is a bit challenging.
I think what would help, since you're representing the Students' Union, I was the president of the Turkish Society at LSE back at the days, and we deliberately went into the parties and invited them to universities, so they can come together with the students, the friends groups can talk to them, like these type of integrations. And maybe this Labour Friends of Turkey group has to make an effort to invite all students' unions in London, and later on regionally as well, to expand beyond London, to represent them and what the Labour Party stands for. And maybe that tackles some of the challenges you had coming in here.
Also, I used to be Turkish Society president.
We're also in a place where it's cultures, isn't it? So when you say, so for example, as I said, my background is Turkish Cypriot, but my family have been here since the 1950s. So you're talking like 60, 70 years. So actually we're on sort of third, fourth generation. It changes. So we've got our own way of dealing with that culture, and nothing is right or wrong, but obviously there's a difference. So I think there is a way of how you bring that all together and celebrate what's same as well as the differences and what's evolved over 60, 70 years, certainly for my community.
And the bottom line is, as Alistair Campbell says, we need to agree that we also disagree sometimes.
That's right,
and that's right, part of creating such a community. Exactly. Any other reflections from the floor? Please.
Yeah, just to echo the student theme, I represent English UK, which represents 330 language schools in the UK. Turkey is one of our biggest markets, but the visa rejection rate is currently about 50%. Right. And I think the diaspora community kind of counts against people sometimes, because they kind of assume that people are going to disappear into it and maybe start working illegally rather than studying English, which is what they're supposed to be coming here for. And it also there's a number of misunderstandings about, for example, how Turkish people manage money, which doesn't necessarily show up in the bank statements that they have to produce as collateral for their student applications. So, and it's starting to cause damage in Turkey, I can tell you, in terms of the UK's reputation. So it might be worth the group looking into that. I don't know if this is your remit. I know you're mostly focused on the British Turkish community, but it could be an issue.
Well, it's also who we lobby, isn't it, really? Because I think that's, I didn't know that, but I think that's something that you can kind of collectively lobby and bring a voice to, and that's the strength of having a group, isn't it? That's exactly the kind of topic I think should be addressed.
Smooth relations between the UK and Turkey, and I think
well, also
need them as much as they need us.
There's a few red flags in what you've said. What you've said to me, the fact that there's a community. I mean, there's a number of red flags in what you've said, but I think, I think that's certainly something that this group should pick up in terms of lobbying, because I'd imagine that's not the experience for all students from all countries. So
no, it's higher
right.
in other countries.
Yeah, which
I mean, you know the figures, but I think there's a striking parallel from what I know of the situation with students from India. Yeah. In fact, one of the biggest sources of tensions between the Indian government and this country is the way that they perceive that applications from Indian students are treated or not treated, rejected, the experiences here. So it's ongoing. So I'm not up to date with the latest sort of debate, but
a fundamental problem, I think, is that student migration is bound up with other forms of migration, so it becomes a whole big political problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that is, that's something that the Labour Party maybe needs to look at.
That's.
It's a very good point. Thank you. We've taken that on board. Over to you.
Hello, Cllr Peray Ahmet. I work at the Coalition for Prosperity, or do advocacy work around international development, and I'm also a voluntary member of the Turkish Centre. And I was wondering what we can expect to see in terms of your work with different community centres across Turkey, across London, that represents delegation of separate communities, and what we can expect to see in terms of their political attitude towards Labour and towards Turkey, and how you balance that sort of political aspect of it.
Dimed, did you say?
Yeah.
I know Dimed very well because it's obviously Bruce Grove and Hackney, so I know the Bruce Grove. I know them very well.
Let me take one more question.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good night and good morning. Sorry I'm late. Lots of people were in the wrong room upstairs waiting, so apologies if this has already been covered. But I've had a house in North Cyprus for 18 years, and the constant frustration that you can't have direct flights and that North Cyprus isn't recognised.
Yeah.
I wondered if this is something which is on your agenda and if you're lobbying to have that recognition, and it would be for the benefit of the Turkish Cypriot people and would make a major difference. I just wondered what your views were on that.
Right. Who wants to take the questions?
How long have we got?
I think your local questions are becoming quite global right now.
Well, I mean, I'm Turkish Cypriot. I mean, I've lived with this issue of direct flights. In fact, honestly, and this is going to be a bit of a cop-out, I just don't think we've got the time to get into this whole debate here. And honestly, I don't think it's as simplistic as direct flights. I think the situation is far more complicated than that. And I think it's, I know there's this tendency to say, do you support direct flights, yes or no? I think it's far too simple. And as I said, I've lived with this issue for like 50, 60 years of my life. Both, my family are from Kyrenia, originally. So I don't think we can do it justice, so I'm not going to commit there. But can I just answer the point about the community centres? So, again, in terms of the Labour Friends of Türkiye, I don't think I'm in a position to answer. But in terms of what we do as a council, so my role as a council is different, and also as a Labour Party. So we certainly, in Haringey, we have a totally kind of out there working with our communities approach. So we have, for example, a Turkish and Kurdish network in Haringey, and that includes all of our relevant stakeholders. Dimer's there, I see them all the time, and other organisations. So we do that. We've set up that specific network because of the size of our community in Haringey, and there's other stakeholder groups, that Somali, I think there's an emerging Spanish-speaking one as well. So that's what we do as a council. And then I think you're absolutely right, though, as a Labour Party. But if I can be frank, there are some tensions as well, and some groups are, might be slightly to the left of the Labour Party, some might be slightly more to the right. So we've got all of those debates. But I think that is a relevant topic. Again, it relates to what we were saying. How do you engage with grassroots? I think is the point as a party, because that's at the heart of this. So you've got those discussions, with government and what we give, but actually then there's the how do you take the Labour Party message and make sure the Labour Party is relevant to this to these diasporic communities, I think, is at the heart of it.
What I can just add on to that is later in the year there will be reception that will be hosted to bring different communities together that Nesil, I think, is planning as Labour Friends of Turkey. And this would be a good way, if you share your contacts with us, that we engage the community groups within that formal launch event. Do you have any final reflections on Unmesh?
No, I think it's a great start. I mean, the launch was in September. I pledged my support on social media, which is the way things get done these days.
Same here, yeah.
And it's onwards and upwards, and I think we will all sort of do what we can from the platforms that we have. Labour Friends of Turkey is what we make of it.
Yes.
Both British Turkish members of our community, but also well-wishers, friends of Turkey, good to know everyone. And the trade union side, let's not forget that. And also, I think the Friends of Turkey will be part of the socialist societies as well. The way I understand,
I don't know yet.
but that's something.
Yeah.
But here I've been in constitutional politics, and but no, so I wish everyone well, and as I say, onwards and upwards.
Thank you. So what we learned today is we don't want to politicize this group. We want to really tackle the grassroots, their priorities, their problems. We want to bridge basically any gaps that exist between communities. We want to represent an entire Turkish-speaking diaspora, and you are all obviously an essential part of it, Peray, Unmesh, as this group formalizes. The main thing is it can't just be a talk show, it has to be sustainable. Absolutely. It has to actually tackle key policy issues that, as you mentioned, with the visa rejections, which we will take on board. So please do stay in touch with Nesil Çalışkan and the Labour Friends of Turkey group. There is a website for it, and she's at the moment collating all these ideas, and we really hope for your support in the next few months. So thank you for my distinguished panelists as well, and have a great conference.
Thank you.